Thank you. Can you please switch on the projector? Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation, and I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm also proud of representing the Russian Federation, because my colleague and friend Georgy Benevich could not come because of medical reasons, so I'm the only one who is representing Russia. For me, it's a special honor. Now, before I start my systematic talk, which is very difficult to do in 20 minutes because the topic on interaction between Saint Maximus and cosmology is huge, because if you look at cosmology not only as physical science but as a state of mind, as some phenomenon which was yesterday described by Paul Blowers as a saturating phenomenon of existence, saturating phenomenon of revelation, but revelation not only of God, but revelation of the universe. The living being in the universe is alive in the universe. Then you realize that when you read Saint Maximus the Confessor, you see through and through the presence of cosmology, because in fact any mystical life of a monk who is praying for the whole world is actually alive with the universe, with a sort of communion with the universe, when the universe is present through every atom, every electron in the body of this saint. Correspondingly, the relevance of my paper to this conference and to all previous talks is obvious, because I will be covering some issues which were actually spelled out yesterday. It's connected with the problem of the body. It's connected with the problem of the human person, because human person or hypostasis is absolutely crucial for understanding the sense of the universe, because hypostasis means that we can continue on hypostasization of the universe through its articulation, through its recapitulation somehow in our knowledge, and the very word universe does not exist apart from human mind, from human consciousness. This means that cosmology, by definition, as any sort of human activity related to something which is fundamentally incommensurable, includes humanity. And it means that cosmology and anthropology, and correspondingly, if we place this as a theological context, cosmology, anthropology, and theology becomes something unique, complex, which we cannot, strictly speaking, separate. And that's why I believe that when we talk about cosmology and Saint Maximus the Confessor, we must definitely say that this is not an artificial setting, it's not an artificial topic, because some people can ask, why do we need cosmology and Saint Maximus? Why do we need actually involve contemporary discourse on the large-scale structure of the universe with the teaching of a saint in the 7th century? And the answer to this is very simple, because if you look at the teaching of Saint Maximus, not only from the point of view of linguistics or history, but if you take his teaching as a rule for life, for mystical contemplation of God in the universe, then you realize that Saint Maximus the Confessor experienced himself as a monk, as a saint. He experienced the presence in the universe and of the universe through and through his writings. Then, nevertheless, I have to be a little bit more formal, and I would like to introduce a couple of aspects of engagement of Saint Maximus with modern cosmology, which will set the limits of this engagement, because definitely if I try to make this engagement straightforward, as it's done in many Western, I would say, trends of the dialogue between science and theology, then we will have a problem, because any straightforward comparison of contemporary science with theological teaching is a sort of fallacy, philosophical fallacy, because you're trying to compare something which is not effectively comparable. I mean, because this comparison doesn't have any spiritual meaning, any soteriological meaning, as for example, Vladimir Lossky was saying in his book when he tried to actually judge about the work of Paul Florensky. That's why, can you please make the next slide? First of all, I would like to do the historical pretext. Definitely, we don't know too much about up to what extent St. Maximus the Confessor knew astronomy and cosmology of ancient Greece. It's pretty clear that he was living in the spiritual and cultural environment of the Byzantine Empire, and this empire, I mean, the universities in this empire, they promoted ideas of astronomy which come back actually to Aristotle and to Ptolemy, the 2nd century BC. And all of us, we know that the system of the world which was proposed by them was very simple. It was a spherically closed universe with a particular set of spheres, and these spheres were corresponding to planets and the stars, immovable stars, which were concluding this sphere. The universe was finite, closed, and that's why, in fact, this picture was in existence nearly for until the 17th century, when effectively it was removed eventually after the so-called Copernican revolution and after the work of Galileo. But what is important that definitely, again, since we don't know exactly how much of this astronomy was known to St. Maximus, we presume that he was living in this particular historical context. Then, definitely, we need to mention that this particular model of the universe, which was very close to the heart of St. Basil the Great, for example, it was not popular among others. For example, John Chrysostom, he did not follow this model. He just believed in rather, I would say, strictly biblical terms that the universe probably was flat. So that's why Maximus, unlike St. Basil, he did not produce his own hexameron. So that's why we don't know what was his position on actually cosmology or astronomy. Definitely the universe, the model of universe was finite, and probably Maximus, if he would follow the biblical teaching, he would presume that the universe was also finite, not only in terms of space, but in terms of time. So that's why the age of the universe would be something like 4,000-6,000 years. Correspondingly, this type of vision did not conform to what he was actually writing, first of all, and it doesn't conform actually to what we have in our days, because if you would ask the question, what would be the position of Maximus to the contemporary claim of cosmologists that the universe is finite in time, it has, according to contemporary observations, the age of approximately 13.7 billion years. And according to modern theories, the universe is infinite and is infinitely accelerating in the open space, so that's why it's not finite. It would be difficult actually to predict what would be the reaction of St. Maximus to this claim. But what is important that Maximus, he approached many things towards the natural world, not on the grounds of physics per se, because he was not a scientist, he was not a physicist, he was a monk and philosopher, and that's why from his point of view the most important thing was that the universe could, it must be finite, but in a different sense. In a different sense, because if God is infinite, the universe must be finite. Because there is sort of incommensurability between transcendent God and the universe. Correspondingly, I just make a simple quote. The universe is characterized by temporality, by the temporal flux. The temporal flux doesn't exist in God, so that's why incommensurability comes here. So that's why whatever people say about the, I would say, infinite universe in our days, as it's presumed, again, it's a theoretical statement because we can't prove this experimentally whether the universe is infinite or not. From the point of view of Maximus, it would be something like this. I mean, I just quote from Ambiguous 10 once again. Everything is certainly in time, since everything that possesses existence after God possesses this existence in a certain way and not simply. And therefore, they are not without beginning. For if we know how something is, we may know that it is, but not that it always was. In other words, for Maximum, the fundamental thing was that the universe is finite, but not in a space-time sense, because, I mean, he could not claim this apart from referring to the Ptolemaic model, but it's finite on the ontological grounds because it's a part of creation. Correspondingly, if we ask the question, if we try to extrapolate Maximus' thought to modern cosmology, what would be the standing of him, or what would be the sense of employing St. Maximus in order to compare with the modern theories of the universe, which claim that the universe is absolutely huge, it's enormous, it's practically incommensurable with us. We are living in the remote part of the universe, we are living in a completely hostile environment. The cosmic environment is hostile in the sense that we are alive on this planet in a very tiny period of time in the cool cosmic evolution, and we are surrounded by physical forces which are ready to destroy us. In this sense, our life in the universe, in spite of all claims of the so-called anthropic cosmological principle, which makes the links between the parameters of the large-scale structure of the universe and us, this link is absolutely contingent. The contingency of this is that, indeed, we have necessary conditions for existence of human bodies. We have necessary conditions for existence of animals and human beings, as it was said yesterday. We have necessary conditions for existence of psychophysiological organization of persons, but we don't have sufficient conditions for this existence because they are not justified cosmologically. In this sense, the question about our position in the universe and the question of cosmology is a fundamental theological question. It's a question which is addressed to all theologians, because theology exists only so far as we exist physically. And the question of our existence as physical existence, it's an open question, because we are existing in hostile contingent conditions. That's why there is no fundamental necessity in our cosmic existence. Once again, the universe is absolutely incommensurable with us. The scale of our planet, we occupy approximately 1 out of 10 to 57 powers of magnitude volume in the universe. Then I must ask myself, what is the relevance of St. Maximus the Confessor to this new cosmological vision, the cosmological vision of the 21st century? In what sense we talk about cosmic liturgy, we talk about Christocentric cosmology, we are talking about mediation between levels in creation and transfiguration of the universe. Because if the universe is fundamentally incommensurable, if it's causally disconnected, and we cannot have any links and any particular communication to the most part of the universe, then what is the meaning of all these terms? Correspondingly, for me, it's clear that we need to make a shift. We need to make a theological shift, and we need to look at the universe not from the point of view of physics, which tells you that the universe is perceived by us in a state of diastatic extension, that the universe is completely separated, chaotic and hostile to us because of creatio ex nihilo, because creatio ex nihilo doesn't have any particular mechanism which would order this universe. Then how to appropriate this model, and what is the meaning of the attempted claim of Christian philosophy and theology for the transfiguration of the universe. And first of all, I would like to look at the last line of this slide, saying that first of all, we need to try to understand what was the vision of St. Maximus the Confessor with respect to the universe. It was not an astronomical vision, it was not a physical vision, it was the vision of the universe inside his heart. Because the universe, as we say, wasn't his heart, it was on the altar of his heart, and he felt this because of the fact of existence. Because once again, we are consubstantial to the universe to some extent, and that's why the universe by default is a saturating phenomenon which is in us. That's why you cannot detach yourself. But to acquire the mind, and this is the last line in this slide, to acquire the mind of the saint means that we need to see God in this universe in the conditions of embodiment, in the conditions of consubstantiality. We need to see God, and we need to try to understand the unity of the universe, the principle of the unity of the universe, through this particular vision. So the acquisition of the mind of saint, it's a famous phrase from George Florovsky, who was promoting the new patristic synthesis. And that's why we try to understand what is the relevance of cosmology in this sense. Could you please make the next slide. Then the next question, which I would like to attract your attention, because there are so many theologians here, and I have to argue this on many conferences, that in fact, if you are seriously theological, then we must accept the thing which were spelled out clearly yesterday. For example, in Father Joshua talk, it was absolutely clearly spelled out that we are living in the special conditions of pathos, and that's why techne, which appeared as a result of this, it's not something which is absolutely natural to human being. If I will use a little bit different language, just for simplicity, that we have the condition which according to theology is called the conditions in the garments of skin, which means that our understanding of the universe, our appropriation of the universe through our body, our interaction with the universe, creation of our technology in order to interact with the universe, it's a result of the condition which we call the garments of skin. What is interesting, that if you look carefully at the definition of garments of skin, in other words, if someone asks you, what is this? The answer is very simple. Look at contemporary science. Look at the contemporary cosmology, because contemporary science and contemporary cosmology gives you a clear explication of what does it mean to live in the conditions of garments of skin. Because the garments of skin is a creation of obstacle of living in transparency with God and with the world, which was in the pre-lapsarian state. So the garments of skin, it's an obstacle in the learning and study of the world, the learning and the study of the universe in a diastatic condition, which we perceive in the present state of consciousness as a diastatic, extended, I would say, disconnected universe. It's a result of the acquisition of the garments of skin, but at the same time, this is an explication of the garments of skin. So that's why contemporary cosmology, it's an explication of the garments of skin, and the contemporary point of the universe, it's an explication of what does it mean to live in this universe in the garments of skin. The question is it bad or good? The answer is, theologically, there's nothing bad in this, because our objective is to use cosmology and to strictly speaking, to use the garments of skin in a positive way. Could you please put another slide? The next one, yeah, okay. We use a positive use of the garments of skin to recreate that impetus which is left latent of the human creation in the image. So that's why, indeed, we still archetypically, we have some inherent memory of all in all. And this memory of all in all is explicated in cosmology, because cosmology is the science of the all in all. It's the science of the universe as a whole. So that's why our objective, if we want to appropriate cosmology in a Maximian way, is to try to look at cosmology not only as a physical science, but to look at cosmology as the explication of the positive use of the garments of skin and bringing cosmology in the internal condition. We need to see the universe, as at the light at the bottom of the slide, we need to see the universe not in the image of humanity and its moral decline. Because, as was said clearly in a famous work of Olivier Clément, Le Sens de la Terre, the sense of Earth, that we are living in the condition when the universe is exposed in the image of our moral decline. We want to see the universe not in the image of humanity per se, but in the image of the divine image. And that is why we need to look at the universe, and we need to change our perception of the universe. What does it mean? As an example, a simple example of this is that the universe, the contemporary cosmology tells us that we are a speck of dust in the universe. Our position, spatial position, and our temporal position in the universe is nearly non-existent. We are a piece of dust in the universe. We are insignificant. We cannot influence the universe. We have nothing to do with the whole, I would say, plan or design or blueprint of the universe, as contemporary cosmologists say. Now, to see the image, to see the universe in the image of the divine image, it means to resist this temptation, to be crushed by the weight of the astronomical facts, as it was said by Gabriel Marcel in the 1940s, and to resist and transcend. But this transcendence does not mean to transcend the universe in a physical sense, just to abandon the universe. just to abandon the physical one. No, it's a completely opposite type of transcendence. We understand the universe. We understand that the universe we see is in the post-lapsarian condition, is separated, causally disconnected, is absolutely hostile to us. And in these conditions, in the conditions of the hell, and this is the conditions of the hell, we need to survive and we need to live accordance with the famous statement of the Saint Silouan Athonite, keep your mind in hell and despair not. So that's why this is an imperative which we use in order to survive in this physical universe. Let me give one example, because unfortunately I cannot give you many examples of how to apply this type of methodology to analyzing Saint Maximus the Confessor cosmological views. I mean, you can find it in my papers and my books, and I'm writing in other books, so that's why I hope everything will be systematized eventually. But I would like to analyze one particular passage related to the Creatio ex nihilo. So can you put another slide? Now, Creatio ex nihilo. I put here two quotations from St. Basil and St. Augustine, famous quotations which I don't want to comment too much. The whole idea of these quotations that if we talk about Creatio ex nihilo, we talk about creation of time. Creation of time together with the universe. And it was understood by St. Basil and St. Augustine that you cannot talk about creation of the universe in pre-existent time. It's something obvious. Now, if we go to the next slide, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay. The next slide, I want to analyze one particular piece from Saint Maximus the Confessor from the Centuries on Charity. It's a famous piece of his reasoning about the concreteness of creation. Now, I will just go quickly. God, who is eternally creator, creates when he wills by his consubstantial word and spirit because of his infinite goodness. Now, this is a general, I would say, apophoric statement which tells that the world is created out of nothing because of the will and goodness and wisdom. Then he says, nor must you object, why did he create at certain time, since he was always good? Now, here is an interesting question, because he asked the question which in the contemporary settings sounds like this. If you would imagine the existence of time or pre-existent space-time before the act of creation, then the question would be, why this creation happened at this particular moment of time? Now, what does it mean, why, and this particular moment of time? It means very simple, that from within this world, according to the biblical teaching, for example, we have creation of the world 6,000 years ago. But the question is why the world was created 6,000 years ago, but not, let's say, 8,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. Then Maximus, he gives a very characteristic answer. The unsearchable wisdom of the infinite essence does not fall under human knowledge. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that if we are trying to answer this question physically, we are in trouble. Because as it was clear from the quotations from St. Basil and St. Augustine, there is no time before creation. Now, contemporary cosmology, and it's very interesting, after nearly 1400 years, contemporary cosmology is struggling with this issue. So that's why if we go to the next slide, please, could you put the next slide? In the next slide, I put a very schematic representation of what St. Maximus the Confessor trying to say. If we consider one particular universe, one particular model of the universe, which states that the universe is created from vacuum as a fluctuation of something from a point, then you look at this bottom of this cone upside down, and you realize that if we position our universe, let's say our universe, it will be universe U1. And if we position this universe with the beginning in the bottom of this cone at some pre-existent space and time, the question which we need to ask, the moment of time of creation T1, what is this moment? Do we really know this moment? Can we know this moment? The answer is certainly no, because of two things. First, we cannot transcend the universe. We cannot look at this universe from outside. Correspondingly, we cannot know this moment. The second thing is the frame of coordinates, t, x, y, which you have here. It's an arbitrary frame which is imposed by the power of my mind, which means that I can shift easily this frame as much as I want, and the moment of time t1 can be anything. Effectively, this means that I can't control the initial condition of my universe because I can't transcend it. So that's why any speculation about the existence of pre-existent time, and correspondingly, which makes the question of Saint Maximus the Confessor relevant, any speculation about this becomes no more than a philosophical hypothesis, because we cannot transcend the universe. Can you put next slide? If we go a little bit further in history of thought, because you see I'm jumping back approximately for 300 years ago. The situation with this creation of the universe in the pre-existent time was formulated in famous Kantian antinomies. The Kantian antinomic number 1 says that either the world has beginning in time and it's limited in space, or antithesis that the world has no beginning and no limits in space. So it's infinite as regards both time and space. Correspondingly, the ambivalence which we have in the picture before is exactly about this. Now, why this ambivalence happens? This ambivalence happens because physics, and in St. Maximus' terms, human mind, we do not control the initial conditions. Because according to physics, we know the laws of the universe, we know the laws across the universe, but we never apply these laws to the initial conditions, because the initial conditions is a mystery. For example, in our planetary system, we have 9 planets, but not 29. We have Kepler laws which describe you the rotation of planets and the correspondence between periods and orbits, but we have no idea why this is a particular position. That's why we do not control the initial conditions. And the whole antinomy of Kant and the question of St. Maximus in contemporary terms is something like this. No, we never control the initial conditions. Because if we would control the initial conditions, we would have access to the contingent facticity of our world. We would know not only contingent facticity of our world, but we know the contingent facticity of ourselves. Because we are, in our act of birth, resemble the creation of the universe. And that is why what is happening in St. Maximus, and this is my last point probably, what happens in St. Maximus, how is evolving his logic, that it's not explicit, so that's why you cannot extract this logic directly from his text, but if you read him through the eyes of sort of a mystical, I would say, appropriation of what he was saying, he's trying to say like this, but let us imagine that instead of talking about different initial conditions in pre-existent space and time, we can speak about different universes, different worlds, with different so-called initial conditions, but not in pre-existent space and time, but in a logical space. Can you please put the next slide? What does it mean? It means that if now I remove the frame of coordinates of x, y, and t, and if I look at this picture as an intelligible space, it's a space of initial conditions, then the question of St. Maximus the Confessor can be reformulated like this. But why did God choose this particular universe, which is denoted in my slide as a corporeal universe, the universe in, I would say, empirical forms of appearance? Why he chose this universe out of the ensemble or plurality of all possible universes with different initial conditions and correspondingly with different times of creation? Because our universe has a particular time of creation related to the biblical teaching, for example. But all other universes, they could be different. But they were not created, or they were created in a different mode. Here, in Ambiguous 7, Maximus states that the logi of all things known by God before their creation are securely fixed in God. Yet all the things present and things to come, have not been brought into being contemporaneously with their being known by God. Rather, each was created in appropriate way according to its logos, at a proper time according to the wisdom of the Maker. So that's why the world was created according to the wisdom of the Maker at its proper time. But again, proper time not as pre-existent time. It's a time as event. It's a time as something which is imbued with the divine intention, with the divine wisdom, and correspondingly, the question, if you look at this diagram, what to do with this plurality of the worlds, which are absolutely naturally introduced in this model, in this teaching. What will happen to these worlds? If they were not created, what is the meaning of them? Or maybe they were created, but they were created as an intelligible image. We are coming to the parallel creation, we are coming to the parallel world, that probably this world, they did not receive a corporeal form. And they were created by God as intelligible counterpart. And this brings us to all contemporary models of the so-called multiverse. Because the so-called multiverse in contemporary cosmology proclaims that our universe, being absolutely contingent, unpredictable, non-explainable, is an ensemble, is a part of an ensemble of the universes. And in this ensemble of the universes we have infinitely many worlds. Then, of course, with a probability equal 1, we have one world which is our world, because we have infinite number of the universe. But this probability, of course, is a posteriori, as people say, which means that a priori probability is 0, because we have infinite number of the worlds. So this is the multiverse of contemporary cosmology or contemporary physics. But once again, the fundamental difference in Maximus, if he would apply his ideas of the logi, is that these universes are not physically real. They are intelligible universes. And what is the meaning of this picture? The meaning corresponds to another interesting concept in Maximus, which is called diaphora. Diaphora in creatio, in creation, which is a constitutive element of creatio ex nihilo. This is a fundamentally important thing which I tried to exploit in my first book 9 years ago. That diaphora, it's a difference between intelligible cosmos noeticus and cosmos aestheticus. It means sensible, which is a constitutive element of all created things. And contemporary cosmology is inevitably false in the fallacy of actually mistreating this diaphora as creatio ex nihilo. Because from the point of view of contemporary cosmology, they could say, all right, our universe, which is a corporeal universe, is created out of nothing. And what is this nothing? This nothing is not nothing. This is the intelligible counterpart of our universe. Because from the point of view of physics, whatever is intelligible is physical. So, in other words, contemporary physicists, they are Platonists, but they are also Platonists of a realistic kind, because they believe that whatever is mathematical is real. So that's why all these universes are real, and that's why we have a choice. According to physics, we have a choice instead of creatio ex nihilo. But certainly, for Maximus, who understood well the difference between the status in these worlds, the question about what is this particular moment of time where the universe was created, can we actually look at this? The answer is no, because the unsearchable wisdom of God is exactly in the choice of the world. This is a question which we need to answer. And the choice comes from the, again, from the wisdom, will, and love of God. Can I ask you, do I have any time or not?
Please.
Yes, all right.
I will stop you.
This I was talking about, I was trying to expose a little bit the concept of the multiverse in contemporary cosmology, saying that the great fallacy of this concept is that they mistreat these intelligible worlds as the physical worlds. And correspondingly, they miss the point. They miss the point that indeed in all physical theories, in all theories which employ mathematics, we are prone to introduce as a last frontier of our understanding of the empirical world, the intelligible universe, first of all. We want to introduce the intelligible universe as an immutable, stable pattern of explanation in order to make deduction from intelligible universe to the physical universe. But this is a point. What is this? From the point of view of the Maximus teaching, this is not creatio ex nihilo, this is diaphora. It's a constitutive element of creatio ex nihilo. So that's why contemporary cosmology, without its own volition, absolutely subconsciously comes to the identification of this diaphora. But I mean, this diaphora is what, if we go beyond? This is a principle of origin. It's something which in St. Maximus, as you well know, is called the Logos. It's a principle of the unity. It's a principle of origin of the universe, which is the Logos. In no way I'm trying to say that we know the Logos of creation. Everybody understands that to know the Logos of creation, we don't have the power of actually mystical contemplation, and we cannot know the Logos of creation because we have no idea about the contingency of creation. It's not subject to our control. Because the contingency of creation, it's, as I said before, it's a contingency of creation of a person. But we do not control the conditions of creation of a person as hypostatic being. In this sense, when I say that we approach the Logos of creation, I'm saying that we detect its presence. And the fundamental presence, the fundamental element in this presence is the diaphora. But the diaphora, because you can ask me, but diaphora appears only if we can contrapose our universe with the plurality of the worlds. My answer will be no, not at all. Because if I will show you another diagram, please, could you? Now, this diagram is a little bit no. Can you come back? Yeah. This diagram is a little bit complicated, so that's why you will forgive me for this complication. Now, this diagram, unfortunately, I don't have a microphone because I would come and just to comment quickly. This diaphora, it's an interesting explication of the expanding universe, our universe where we live, from the Big Bang. Yes, can I just have? Thank you. This diagram, it's a very simple, popular exposition of what is the expanding universe. Now, if this is a point of the so-called Big Bang, the beginning of the universe, which is inferred from the contemporary observation of the expansion of the universe, then according to this model, the contemporary universe, which is represented by the circumference of this circle, somehow has its beginning in the Big Bang. So the universe is expanding in these circles. Okay, this is the axis of time. But what is the most interesting thing in this picture? Because some people, when they look at the sky, they believe that when they look at the sky, they see the whole universe. And this is a fundamental deception. Deception of the sense. Deception of our sense and deception of our garments of skin. Because if this is a universe as a whole, of course it's a metaphoric whole, because the universe is quite possible infinite. If this is a universe, this circumference is the universe as a whole, then let us consider what is us. And us are here. This is me. This is an observer. I'm here at a given moment of time. I'm here in Belgrade. Now the situation which I want to ask, what can we see in the universe? If physics is true, and if the principle of relativity of Einstein is true, and the maximal speed of propagation of signal is c, 300,000 kilometers per second, then I want to disappoint you immediately. We see 1 divided by infinity time part of the universe. Why? Because if I'm here, I see the universe along the so-called light cone of the past, along which the photons, the quanta of light, they're coming to me. What does it mean? It means that if I look at sky, I see 1 divided by infinity representation of the universe. The universe is infinite and I'm incommensurable because I'm a one-dimensional creature. Here, correspondingly, if I see the universe only along this light cone, I don't see anything here, or there. Not at all. And I will never, ever be able to see this. This means that the universe in this representation is fundamentally infinite, and this is our universe. And I'm incommensurable because I'm finite because of embodiment. because of a particular position in the universe. Correspondingly, what is interesting, the universe immediately splits. Splits into empirical and intelligible, because the empirical universe is here. This is what I observe. But whatever I have here, it's effectively non-existent, because this is an intelligible universe. It's a construction of my mind. But in order to have this picture, I need a fundamental premise. I need to postulate that the concept of the Big Bang must be in place. And where the concept of the Big Bang comes? It comes from a very interesting observation, because people understood this since the times of Kant, that if the universe is actually infinite, and if I want to extrapolate my physics, if I want to explicate the universe, I need to postulate, and this is a postulate, this is a philosophical assumption. In fact, this is a theological assumption. I need to postulate that the universe is uniform. This principle of uniformity of the universe comes actually from St. Athanasius and John Philoponn. So in this sense, it's not us who introduced this principle in cosmology, it's them, because they were struggling with the question of how to apply the earthly science to the stellar objects.
Yeah.
And this is the fundamental premise of this picture and this conclusion, that in order to explain the universe, I need to postulate the principle of uniformity. And what is the principle of uniformity? The principle of uniformity is an explication of the logos. Because the logos of creation of the universe must be, by definition, as the logos, as the word, be explicable. I don't say be known, but be explicable. And the explication in contemporary cosmology of this logos is very simple. In order to know the logos of the universe, I need to postulate that the universe is uniform. And if I postulate that the universe is uniform, I inevitably come to the conclusion of its beginning. Because the conclusion about its beginning is what? The beginning is the unification center. Because all universe is unified in the Big Bang. Because all causally disconnected parts, they are unified in the Big Bang. And here, the last point, and I finish.
And that must be the last point, yes.
Okay, half a point, yeah? The diagram, I want just to show you a couple of, can you just, show, next one. Next one. This is a diagram, it's just last explication. No, the previous one. This diagram is well known to you. Because this diagram comes from Mr. Gagia of St. Maximus, who was trying to explain the sense of creation. I mean, the circumference on this circle is created world. In the center we have the logos. And the logi, little logi, they proceed from the logos to the universe. And in this sense, the universe is uniform because the universe is on the same distance, it's the same diastema between the logos and the universe. Now, if we combine this diagram, can you put the next slide, please?
I will have to actually come to an end.
Yes, this is the last thing, okay? If we combine these diagrams, I'm just trying to say that if I will try to superimpose the St. Maximus diagram on my cosmological diagram, we come exactly to this, that the logos of God proceeds to our universe. It proceeds to all points to our universe, making the universe theogenic. I call this theogenic. But what is interesting, in cosmology, this theogenic nature of the universe at equal distance from the logos is transformed, and don't ask me how, because this is a mystery, is transformed to the cosmographic uniformity. Cosmographic uniformity is a principle of uniformity of the universe. So I must stop. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.